yeah,
Right.
because
That's why I
the
said appeasement.
yeah, because the environment for that, because the environment is actually over. It's going to be actually the environment in the next 10 years. Actually, I was saying to everybody who would listen, the actual person that's probably was a better president for what's coming is probably Bernie Sanders. Because the
Yep.
universal income will probably come, and you need to kind of ease that path into it. And you need a socialist to actually administrate something, a socialist policy that's going to come in worldwide. And there's
Yeah,
no way around it.
Or
but
or have a
guess who prevented Sanders' rise, and guess who's responsible
Hillary,
for Trump's rise?
Hillary Clinton, yeah.
right. Or
And
you get a Republican that puts the different lipstick on the same pig, which is basically what you're looking at happening. I wholeheartedly agree with single payer. They're going to have to do something.
Hmm.
And again, it's going to have the same lipstick, but a different lipstick on the same pig. But
Yeah.
the folks that are in there, like I said, appeasement. The folks that think, for instance, all those folks that didn't like Obamacare and
Hmm.
are pro-Trump and we voted. Many of them are on Obamacare. Then
Yeah.
that's why the first thing he did is said, "Wait, oops,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to overstep that because that's going to hurt their bottom line, as well as some of these insurers and these other companies that are saying, hey, if we look at the healthcare stocks, when they first, when things started, to just look at the charts, and that could tell you exactly where things have started,
Hmm.
started to go back toward normalization because of the fact everybody was scared, and then all of a sudden it was, wait a minute,
Hmm.
okay, we're gonna have to chill him out because it's not just hurting, like you were saying, all those folks with guns. Most of those folks with guns have taken advantage of a lot of the programs that the neoliberals, for lack of a better term. The
Hmm.
thing is if he's going to be having to step lightly, which is why they're saying his deficit is going to go through the roof. Okay, no
yes,
doubt about it. He's going to spend more money, and whether it's the promise of infrastructure for these isolation and protectionist measures or whatever it is, he's going to spend more money than anybody else in history,
Yeah.
including Reagan,
Yeah.
because he
Well,
has
what he
no
need to
choice.
do, what he
Uh,
need to do is cut out this aid too.
this who?
the aid,
Aid,
foreign aid.
Oh,
foreign
foreign aid.
aid.
Yeah. Yeah. I think.
That's on the table.
Yeah, that's on the table. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
NATO. Oh, go
NATO
ahead.
make companies. If you want U.S. protection, pay for it.
Well,
Right. That's yeah.
they were talking about that anyway. Obama was talking about that. That's what the pushback was about the EU armed forces, the EU army, because basically America wants out of Europe as far as defending them. They want NATO out because it's too big of an expenditure, but they need to put something in its place, and that's what the EU army was about. Yeah, but the Europeans really don't want it. They're very comfortable with the United States being a neutral third party as far as defending Europe because they know what their history is.
And they know the
I
cost
think
factor.
if you,
Yeah.
I, I think if you went to that, a lot of you wars would stop.
No, not necessarily.
Don't you think so?
No.
What would be the
Well,
purpose? Because really, the
Nope.
purpose now is just some underhanded people is getting money. Look at the money that Obama spent to train what 250.
Okay. There's this. Okay, this is just my opinion on history. Okay, after World War II, there's two things. There's two things that they did. Two things that they did after World War One, especially the rest of the world in Europe, is number one, take the world off the a strict gold standard. That was number one. The first thing that they did. They did that with Bretton Woods. They did it. They softened. We went on a quasi gold standard. The second thing they did was they put troops into Europe to keep the three powers from fighting that they had been fighting for like 300 years. They would say eliminate that because that's where it always started. So they did those two things because the gold standard is like Ahmed said, Liaquat Ahmed says it's a girdle, it's a straight jacket. And if you're going to increase population, because gold standard worked fine as long as the population was stable. If you had no more than 500 million people on the planet, the gold standard worked absolutely fine. You go down to a certain level, okay, then you just work a little harder, you bring gold back into the country, or vice versa. You got too high, and your prices were too high. Gold went out of the country, so it kept you within a certain range. But the thing is, if your population grows outside of that range, and you don't have the gold, you either make more products or do you do what? Like the European, like the Germans did. We just go take it from somebody else, and that's what was causing the wars in Europe. Them taking not only territory but also gold and riches and whatnot because their population increases. So those are two things that they did.
And the other thing I wouldn't be surprised
Hmm.
happening is if there isn't in this new world some sort of coordination between the U.S., Chinese, and Russia, how to divvy up Africa. And
Oh, that yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's
and
all.
that
Yeah, yeah,
and that sounds very pessimistic, but it's the truth. I mean, the Africa's in this era, and I hate to put it this way, Africa's last chance was Gaddafi,
Mhm.
and
probably. Yeah, to be
and
independent. Yeah,
to be independent.
yeah,
Yes. So now I think if you're going to see any rapprochement between the U.S. and Russia and China, one of the deals on the table is how they're going to split up Africa into spheres of influence. Who's going to get what part of Africa?
yeah.
Because
Right.
all three economies are going to be teetering on the brink in the near future. Um, the other thing I want to mention in terms of the domestic economy in regards to wage inflation too is neither Trump or anybody else is discussing the big elephant in the room, and that's housing prices.
Hmm.
The fact
Right.
is that the banks have all this. I think they still have a bunch of bad assets on their
Yeah,
books,
they do.
and the banks are still going to the Fed window for hidden bailouts.
Yeah, they do.
And to me, the only way to again prevent massive inflation is to one, they have to release all these bad assets to the market and stop the hidden bailout window and shut the bank and shut those banks who are insolvent down.
It's all of
Now,
them. That's all of them.
that's it, which is true, but the Congress has a right to restart the banks. Now, the reason I don't think this is going to happen, even though to me they're going to find it's necessary for it to happen, Trump is a real estate guy, and the value of his holdings will drop unless it works out for him. Whatever deal he has with what banks.
The thing is, they
Right.
can
Well, you saw what.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to
You
say,
saw what he did with the Glass Steagall.
yeah. Oh, did he?
And
To my Trump?
what? Yeah, you know what they're proposing
Dodd
is to
Frank.
roll back everything. I mean, Dodd Frank, and I heard Glass Steagall is they
Yeah.
were a remix, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's coming
I heard
back.
that yeah. Yeah, that and the thing when you were talking about EU armies and whatnot, I know you saw the thing with Nigel Farage saying, "Hey, it's right for America to not have to pay for NATO. That some other folks have to, take." Basically, he's trying to, appease Trump and say, "Sorry, Boris and I were just kind of joking," and he did that earlier today. This thing when you're talking about the real estate is when they're talking about rolling back Dodd Frank. Dodd Frank wasn't just about banks, okay? That is going hand in hand with the commodity trading, the trading act that they put in, and just about every other regulation that basically that hampered and to not hurt his assets. They need to have the Wild West of finance. They need that to come back to where you could securitize anything you want. You could, I'm not saying we'll see more Bernie Madoffs, or Madoff might get out of jail next week. But the thing is they need that kind of thing in order to basically not put price up against themselves.
The thing is, it won't work because the thing is, human nature. The thing is, once you took off the Glass-Steagall, what they found out is human beings cheat, and they can't help themselves. They will cheat. If you open up to be the wild, wild west, then you're basically, and if they don't do it right, they don't put restraints on themselves. America, as far as the financial commodity, is done. They're
Well,
done.
Can you guys answer me this question? Why would Trump get rid of Dodd-Frank but want to reinstall Glass-Steagall?
Because Dodd-Frank doesn't work. It's not strict enough. People have found ways around it. It does not work. The Glass-Steagall, it was in place. It is a strict barrier. If you allow any banks, because banks are under pressure to make profits, they're under pressure to make profits. And if you're in the, basically, if you're in the whole, any organization, okay, any organization, if you say that these are the targets that you have to meet, otherwise you're going to lose your job, and you can't do it basically legally, what are you going to do? You're going to cheat. You want to lose your job. I have to.
Well, I tell you,
I'll answer that for you.
Go ahead.
This is why. And I said a remix of a Glass-Steagall.
Yeah.
It has to do with this isolationism and this protectionism that I keep talking about, because that's where America's standing, because that's the world is standing. It's getting more toward that. They're more of a Glass-Steagall for international capital because of the fact that of all these other treasury holders and all these other things, everybody's still cheating, and even the so-called emergers are cheating even
Cheating
more than
even
America
more.
ever
Yeah.
could think about cheating
Yeah.
right now. And they're actually getting the heads up because in other words, you slap tariffs on someone else and you give subsidies to your own.
Yeah.
The Dodd-Frank was regulating more American capital than anyone else. I deal with it in trading because of all the leverage things that kept happening to me in both in the foreign exchange as well as the commodities markets. I'm being hit and strangled by regulations for me to be able to trade. So I have to trade with international brokers to get leverage that that if I really want. Well, they're actually able to I mean, all the hedges, all the swaps, all the things that these other countries are doing because they're not strangled with the regulations. And that Dodd-Frank has regulated so many things on the American soil.
But the thing is, you're a offender. You're a first-time offender. So naturally, the restrictions on you are going to be worse than everybody else because you're the offending party. And for them to come
Well, I'm saying that
yeah,
Americans are being overregulated, and the international are not overregulated, or I should say, the regulations have not hit them like they have hit America. I mean, I saw my leverage going on a lot of my. I'm like, dang, I can't trade like I used to trade on certain things when I'm trying to get hedges and whatnot. And this makes sense for him to go ahead and scrap Dodd-Frank because that gives that, like I said, he's not going to go ahead if a devaluation of real estate starts to really hit a lot of his assets. He's going to make sure that he's either hedged or that it doesn't put that he's not overregulated. That he can't take advantage of.
As a businessman, you can do that, but as a president, you cannot because as a president, you have to think about the whole picture because you can't. You have to balance your trade-offs. You can't think about your portfolio as much as you could. Unless you're getting ready to resign being president, because you're going to get hit with a whole bunch of other stuff. You have to worry about the survival of the whole country, because your billions don't mean squat if the United States breaks up.
Right. Thus the advent of the right-wing cabinet, the right-wing Congress, the right-wing just about everything, because they're the ones who are going to roll back so many regulations. And again, this is not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's a logical thing in terms of being able to in a very increasing protectionist world.
What would you put it in its place that's actually going to work?
Oh, you mean getting rid of Dodd-Frank?
If you get rid of Dodd-Frank, what would you put in its place? Or would you just go back to what you had before after they rolled back the Glass-Steagall?
Isolationism ain't off the table.
Isolationism is not going to work.
It sounds like
it's going to get to a point. It's going to get to a point where it could get to a point where that's what you got to fall back on.
Yeah.
Well, the world's headed there.
It is.
It's not going to work. It worked. Isolationism worked when the world wasn't connected. Isolation worked when you had all the technology and the rest of and like 90% of the world didn't. The 90% has caught up. Isolation is not going to work.
Well, it would work for them too if everybody was on that particular level, and we may not live to see it. But the way things are going, that's going to be, it's going to be inevitable.
Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Let me give you a case in point. One word, Duterte. Okay? Let me give you another case in point. Vietnam, Cambodia, another one, Colombia. Isolation is already there. It's just how they do it and what forms. Economic isolationism, i.e. Protectionism, monetary protectionism, like China's quote unquote going to be forced to devalue again. These are just different forms of isolation. But in the bottom line, it's you make sure you cut your price down and make sure that whoever's putting stuff in your country has to pay higher tariffs. Now, how you do it and how far you go with it, it doesn't matter, but it's got to be done. And that's where the world is headed, irrespective of what we think might or might not work. It's already there.
Well, the thing is,
ironically, who would have benefited more?
Go ahead, Kwame. Hello? Okay.
Doesn't use mechanism in all of this agriculture. They still got people out there bent over doing those manual jobs. Mm-hmm. If you do go to isolation, you're going to have to get rid of technology and go back to a lot of manual stuff.
Yep. And basically, in the next, I would say 10 years, a lot of your commodities are going to, like they say, going to drop to zero because the robots are going to be doing the work. How do you manage that?
It's go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm saying in this new isolationist world, I hate to say it, the big loser will now be Africa
The
because
African global.
Yes, because what's going to happen now, even though the U.S. will claim to be isolationist, China will claim to be isolationist, Russia's the exception because they don't need its resources. But the fact is, those two poles need Africa's resources
Yeah.
to survive,
Yeah.
and they'll still
Right.
need them cheap.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to see, if it were the old neoliberal environment, more resource wars. In the new, what can we say, isolationist environment, proto-socialist environment, there's going to be cooperation between the U.S. and China. Even so much so, I read a Sputnik article the other day that China is willing to help the United States with the infrastructure buildup.
Yeah.
So what is that telling?
I mean,
So are
the
U.S.
war's over.
workers going to work at Chinese wages?
Or
That'll be interesting.
or somewhere.
That's what I was saying about wage inflation. That's
What-
exactly.
Well, they've been talking about global. Remember, a long time ago, Kwame, back I think it was 2010 or 2009, they were talking about global rebalancing as far as wages are concerned.
Yep.
Yep, that's what you're gonna
China
have.
was catching up and the U.S. was going down.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, and this is from seeing the experience in Jamaica, where the Chinese are building a lot of infrastructure there, not necessarily well, but the Chinese do have probably more experience of big projects now than the American company.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another question we're going to have. Are we going to have Chinese management of American projects? And how's that going to go with Joe Blow in Des Plaines, Illinois, or Joe Blow in Decatur, Illinois, who has to work for a Chinese manager to build a road to his own community?
Yeah, I don't think you put. I don't think you can put the genie back in the bottle. I really don't.
Exactly.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Isolationism, I don't think will work because I don't think you can put the genie back in the bottle.
But we'll
Go
see.
ahead, Bob. Why do you think it's going to happen? Go ahead. What? Explain.
Is
Well,
what
you
is the
remember-
Chinese coming here and doing it? I don't think
They're already here. They're already here.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying
They're
China.
not on no major. They not on any major commercial construction sites.
You don't see them.
Yeah,
no,
Because they're under American names. I mean, you don't see them as workers, but they're under American names. There's a lot of Chinese money building. There's a lot of Chinese are basically building 1, 2, 3 high-rise buildings in Los Angeles as we speak.
Well, I'm talking about the labor concern.
No. It's not going to be the labor, Baba. The Chinese is going to be the management.
Right.
Right. But also knowing how the Chinese behave in other places, they demand that the wages be down to Chinese levels in order to do these projects so they can make their profit. Now, I know the Chinese built some roads in California. Isn't that correct, Ethan? And how are those managed?
Here's a good case in point. Because more history changes, more that stays the same. One, as you were talking about Africa, the wealth in the soil, like Dr. John Henrik Clarke, is not in people's lands. Here's the deal. When you were talking about the Chinese, there was a film with Tom Hanks back in the day. Y'all remember it was called Gung Ho.
Yeah.
And it was about the Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
We're remixing it. History has not stopped. This is the same thing that's happening, whether it's the streets that are being built, and it's not just only Chinese that have invested in here, or or in Nashville, what's the Crane City or whatnot they call it. Basically, you will see management that's been outsourced to a lot cheaper. And the wage inflation in China has gone up, so they can't pay those managers. But that's why you see a lot of East India on the job. You see Hispanic, Arab. You see a lot of folks out of the what I call the stands. I get them every time I get a whether it's a contractor out here in California. A lot of the contractors for home warranty and insurance are either former Soviet or former like Uyghurs, that kind of thing, or whatnot, or mostly like Georgia and whatnot. So it's still under Chinese management, or it's almost like seeing a Chinese face, but it's not. They're just paying a lot cheaper, but it's still Chinese money and Chinese objectives to pay lower wages to get stuff done. While I was talking about the wage inflation, how does this go ahead and affect Joe Blow? Again, they're going to have to appease Joe Blow, and a Joe Blow is very easy to appease for the fact that all you need to do is give him like black folk talking words, and maybe a couple of tax rebates like Bush did a few times, and other little basically to make them feel good, but don't take too much away from them. I.e. Obamacare, i.e. a lot of these things that he said he was going to roll back, which ain't going to be rolled back for the fact that it's going to hurt everything from wages to everything from products. Again, we're seeing a rollback to the Reagan days, but with a different face. When in terms of as these international folks coming in, like I said, just watch the movie Gung Ho one more time, and
Yeah.
you'll see exactly.
Well,
What's
the
happening.
only difference, the only caveat I would put on that is back then, United States was the supreme superpower, and everybody knew it. That is no longer the
Exactly.
case. What happens? You can do it if you're leading. What happens if you're in second place?
And
Well,
that's a good point. I think Trump's victory means this is the U.S.'s white flag, so to speak.
Basically, yeah.
Saying
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
you
that
know,
they're
you may
stepping
mention.
back. They can no longer run the world, but the Chinese also indicated they don't want to be number one either, and that's why we're going to have these spheres of influence. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested whether the Chinese and Russians will cede back South America to the United States. And I hate to put
Uh,
it that way because
I,
these
I,
are
I think that.
supposedly independent countries.
Well, I think they agree because there's spheres of influence with blocks, and everybody understands what's what. Because they talk. The G20 is not there just because the 20 nations want to meet. A whole lot of people come to those G20 meetings other than just the G20. They understand what's what. They understand what needs to be done. And the Chinese are not ready to take over because their financial architecture and all the stuff that you need to take over is not in place. And that's how come they weren't ready for the United States to collapse. There's nothing there to catch the pieces.
Well, you talking about the manager. We had Nigerian companies over here in the United States doing construction management for a long time, for
Hmm.
decades. See, but the thing is that the way China go around the world doing projects, China take their own labor modules,
Yeah, they used to.
which is basically like a little city of themselves. But they not going. That's not going to come to the United
They
States.
well they
No,
don't they
I was
don't
never claiming it would come to the United States. That
what,
would cause a high degree of violence
yeah
in the United
Cause another war.
and the thing is, the reason the Chinese did that in certain places is because those people did not have the expertise to do it. You don't have that in the United States. You have plenty of people that can do that kind of work.
And
Yeah,
Also,
even where there are expertise, again, I'm just using my experience in Jamaica. You
Okay.
have certain government entities, or let's say non-government entities associated with politicians, that are able to threaten those who will complain about the Chinese labor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's not going to happen here in the United States because the people are armed.
yeah.
Right.
And not only was the expertise, but it also prevented the corruption, because if they said that they were going to do something for a certain amount, they had their own people there to make sure it happened,
Hmm.
and it wasn't none of this conniving like we see go on all the time. And
also
China
good
has a
tell.
different culture too.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
much.
Look, if a manager in a Chinese factory does something beyond the unusual, hell, he's either subject to punishment, or hell, some of them even commit suicide.
Well, yeah, the Asian authoritarian culture is very, very different, and people don't really understand. The Koreans are like that, Chinese are
Yep.
like that, and the Japanese, even though they don't need to punish their people because they're self-controlled. Germans, to a certain extent, are like that.
Oh yes,
Believe it
to
or
a
Very
not.
large
practical.
extent,
Yeah,
to a
to a
very
here's-
large extent.
yeah.
To that.
Here's a good tell to kind of get the reason why the Chinese are not taking that model, like you might not think, seeing a lot of Chinese labor.
Mhm.
Again, like I said, same pig, different lipstick. What it is you don't necessarily need to have the physical representation to get your job done.
Mhm.
That's why you have proxies. That's why you have Steve Bannon in your cabinet for the white supremacists now. The thing is it's the same thing as gung ho. If you watch that movie carefully, what they do, they got one of the lackeys in the union to go ahead and get their directives done. If you
Mhm.
watch Which Way Is Up, Richard Pryor, the same
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily. That's why you might see, Nigerians been doing it for years, whatever the case is, and you might not see the Chinese and per se, well, they're not going to happen. Yes, it's happening. It's already here. Okay. Here's a good case in point. I saw how the Mexicans next door to me had put up a roof.
Mhm.
I was watching the labor because I watch labor very carefully of what people are doing.
Mhm.
The first folks that came in were the contractors. The place is owned by Vietnamese, okay, that own the building next to us.
Right.
The first folks I saw were contractors. They were like, not, I won't say Lebanese, but like Armenian or something like that. They came in. They had all their little, the pads or whatnot that they were going on and doing stuff.
Mhm.
And then as they went in, the guys that went in and did the survey work for the building and get everything done up top, were looking, they were the light-skinned Hispanics. You know, I could
Okay.
tell they were definitely not Mexican.
The
Then all of a
Latinos, huh?
sudden, the guys that came in to go ahead and do it were a little darker brown Mexicans who were actually getting the prepping the roofs and everything. Then the day laborers that they got from Home Depot. And then it went on the opposite. They were the first ones to go off the roof after everything was done. Then the little darker Mexicans came in
Or
and
Central
inspected to
Americans.
make everything
Central
right.
Americans,
The Central,
probably. Americans.
yeah, they came in to inspect
Yeah.
everything, and then the light Spanish, Mexicans came in and they
Mhm.
went ahead and signed off, talking to the and then the contractors came in to make the deal to get paid from the Vietnamese, and all this was done with Chinese money.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's like it's not necessarily that you have to have that physical representation there. It's already happening, whether it's who's painting the streets. You might see brothers or whatnot, but here's a tell.
Mhm.
Look at where the unions and the right to work states are. And
Yeah.
again, that's where Joe Blow comes in question, because that's where the real deal is going to happen, because right now energy is still suffering. And then you've got all those coal folks and the coal plants and whatnot that are still pissed off from the quote unquote neoliberal agenda that put them out.
Mhm.
Also, you have those folks that are in the energy field, all those folks that ran up to North Dakota because of
Right.
fracking, and then all of a
Right.
sudden all
Right.
those folks got hit.
Yeah.
That's, if you really want to see where things are headed, where the Chinese or whatnot. And I'm not just talking about this pipeline that that the Indians are fighting over or whatnot.
Mhm.
I'm talking all kinds of industry that has to do with unionization or anything that's not right to work type situation. That'll be your tell as to how deep the Chinese or any other influence, East India or whatever, is going to be in terms of their impact in this new environment.
Yeah, Karl Marx would
Yeah.
love this time of year, this environment. If he could come back, he'd be rubbing his palms right about now.
That's right. And then the other situation is that they say Trump is going to cancel a lot of the H-1B visa program, and
He
Silicon Valley shaking in its boots. Now I could tell you,
Mhm.
in the auto industry, most of the H-1B workers are East Indian,
Mhm.
and there is rising resentment against them from both whites and blacks. One, not just because of the cheap labor, but the East Indians have gotten into the point of the companies where they've taken over management,
Yeah.
and their boys are being promoted. A lot of unqualified ones are being promoted.
Mhm.
So that's the other interesting thing that's going to occur. And I go back again. I think we hit on the issue of Obamacare,
Yeah.
on housing prices. The
Yeah.
other thing that's going to have to be taken care of, and again, it may take a Republican to do a socialist deed,
Yeah.
is the education sphere.
Yeah.
The college education is way too expensive. There are too
Yep.
many administrators. Those folks are going to have to be fired, the administrators. Number two, I think you're going to see a lot of universities dropping their sports programs, because those are becoming a net drag on certain institutions, unless
Yeah.
you like the Big Ten or the SEC or the Pac-12 or something.
Right.
So I think that's the next big thing that's coming. You're going to
Yeah.
have you're going to see a mass cut in educational expenses.
You know,
So-
you know what, LeBro? I think the biggest key that you want to see in that, and if it happens, that's going to be the game changer, is how you certify people, because your degree is basically a certification, and
That's
how you
right.
how do you certify an engineer? Okay, one, he's got to have a degree. Second thing, he has to take the couple of tests that he has to take to certify him as an engineer. Okay, if the kid is going online and he's doing the same coursework, how do you certify him?
That's a good question, and I know I was listening to Gerald Salenti,
Mm-hmm.
and he was basically saying that the next key isn't just the online classes, but he was saying he feels it's going to be almost virtual classes, in the sense that it's going to be as if you are in the room yourself
Yeah.
with your classmates, and you can look at your computer both ways and see the classmates and the professor, and the professor can see your face. And he was even suggesting that is a
3D goggles. 3D goggles.
goggles,
They
yes.
already have it.
And,
Yeah.
and he was saying that this is going to be the next big thing in terms of investment.
Yeah.
Because it says,
Oh, definitely.
My grandson's doing it now with a course.
Mm-hmm.
wow. So,
Well-
and he was saying this is what you have to get in the ground floor in, because he said college is overpriced.
Yeah.
And this is the only way to cheapen college costs now, because those education costs are going up.
You're gonna be down to about 25 HCBUs.
Yep.
Yeah.
If that,
If they don't change their model, they need to start doing it now. They need to start
Yes.
changing their model of education now. They can survive if no, like homeboy said, like Jeremy Irons said. There's three ways to make money in this business: be first, be smarter, or cheat.
Yep.
Hmm.
And HBCUs can't cheat, and I doubt they can be smarter. So they have to be first. They got to jump on this now.
And
Exactly.
I think 20 to 25 is optimistic because if you look at the HBCUs in Louisiana, I mean, Southern University is the only viable one left,
Right.
right? The Mississippi HBCUs, there's no viable one left in Mississippi, and you could almost say the same for the Texas schools.
Hmm.
So you have Bethune-Cookman, you have FAMU,
Hmm.
you have Howard, you have Hampton. Who else do you have there? That's really Southern University. You could say Tuskegee and
Alcorn.
Morehouse.
Yeah.
Huh?
You know what you know what, little bro. You know what, little bro. If it were me, and you said, okay, design, we want to keep the HBCUs alive and design a program for the HBCUs. I wouldn't have them just as colleges. I'd bring in the coursework, and I would start the kids at 4 years old,
Well,
Excellent.
but
Yeah.
you're
That's
right.
an excellent
and bring and
idea.
bring
You're
and
right,
bring.
but they're
Go
not.
ahead. Go ahead.
Look. The reason why come HCC when you say they can't be smarter, well, they could, but it can't start there. It has to start all the way down to elementary school. That's
Yeah.
where they get jacked at.
What-
And that's why I'm happy to hear Trump talk about school choice.
Right.
You don't
Right.
even
And
have to talk about that. We know what's going on.
Yeah. But say
exactly.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Carl.
Let me go back to what Brother Peter was saying. When you were saying about the visas and about East India, see, the thing is brain drain brings economic development, especially when you have a lower demographic of 15, from 0 to say 25. That's going to be your growth segment of your economy.
Mhm.
That's why India and all, South America. When you talked about Latin America earlier, when the thing is over here, there's a lot of the health companies. The India goes ahead and basically they're paying these guys like 50 cents an hour. They're bringing them all in from India. They all sleep like 10 folks, and all they are is like a call center for health firms and IT for health firms.
Right.
And they're teaching them IT like crazy. Now, these guys might work for 50 cents an hour, but they're going back into the world, i.e., because they're now those outsourcing of brain, so the brain drain doesn't happen. That outsourcing, for lack of a better term, is now outsourced into our communities,
Right.
where now all of a sudden they're building what they need to do and bringing that money back to India.
Yeah.
Case in point, AVG Software call center is in India. Now, when I saw that, and every time I walk downtown, I'm like, how come all these East Indians, where'd they come from? And then I talked to the Lebanese dude that's also, in heavy business dude, and he says, man, I know you've been gone for a while, but they came in and they dominate, and here's how they did it. He says they come in, they spend 50 cents, they all drink out of the same Starbucks cup so they could get refills, but they've been aggregating their money, and they basically own the two buildings. I mean, out of nowhere. Now, here's the thing. You're talking, and I'm going to tie this under education, and why I'm so glad you brought up about school choice as well as these visas. It's so important for us to remember this. And this is what the so-called neoliberals and neoconservatives have done to kind of cut their throats. We're in a world where, again, it's becoming more gig economy. So you have to innovate. You have to create things to actually be able to support and actually make new products that people are going to need in that environment. And it takes knowledge, it takes innovation, it takes education to get it. Again, educating for products, goods, and services the world's wants, needs, can't do without, and ready to kill for. And the thing is with a gig economy, we can go without an Uber if we have to use our legs or use a bus. Yeah. But having someone that's IT, having someone that's health, having someone that's trade schools, or someone who can fix my sink, I mean, you name it. Yeah. Those are the things. Now, let me fast forward to the conversation when you guys were talking about what HBCUs need. Here's the thing. In terms of what these schools are doing and why school choice and things is, it's going to go outside. Remember when folks were going to college for a business degree, and going for college for a social degree, and going for college for, because I want to get into the defense or whatever that is. No, right now colleges and other schools, especially HBCUs, and any school that wants to compete in a seriously isolationist competing world is going to have to compete with everything from IT to how to weld, how to craftsmanship, agriculture, health. And I'm not talking about, I'm growing some ferns. No, I'm talking about serious health. That's like, Cuba and steroids. things that the world wants, needs, can't do without, and ready to kill for. Now, the thing is, when you're talking about school choice, you may see this, and I may be wrong, but because of the brain drain, number one, that these other folks didn't, like China and India, whatnot. It wasn't a brain drain to go ahead and send your folks out like black folk do, and you don't get anything back. They had to drain the brain so they could bring back the information, so they could become more competitive, sending their goods and services and everything else. That's why India's got a call center of ABG there. You know, it wasn't a thing. It was like, hey, okay, you guys have good. It was like what Gaddafi said. You know, he was bringing back. He said, you can't make a good Arab in the legs of a European. He wasn't just talking about that in terms of physical. He was saying, look, if you're going to go there, or like Dr. John Henrik Clark said, go there, stay there. He was saying, look, go there, get their resource, get the knowledge, get things, and bring it back to us. Yeah. Bring it back to the Arab country.
And brother, that shows you the importance of culture.
Yeah.
Right? Because the Arabs, the Indians, the Chinese, the Japanese love and respect, and they're brought up in a culture that is exalted, they are willing to go back to the places where they're from eventually. They have a long-term plan. Granted, this trend was kind of reversed a little bit in the past few years, but by and large, people from African-dominated countries really don't see their culture as worthy, and that's why they don't go back. And black people as a whole, even in the United States, don't see what culture we have as worthy to go back to benefit us. And you know, to be honest with you, I think out of all of the groups, and then this is nothing earth-shattering, the racial groups in the world, we are in the worst position out of all of them.
Yeah.
And that includes the Native American, because we do not, one, have a culture we respect, and two, we have very few of us that think beyond 5 years. Whereas you have the Indians and the Chinese, they think in terms of generations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that culture is actually education and skills are two different things. Mm-hmm. And just like you said, your education, which includes culture and everything else, teaches you how to use your skills. Mm-hmm. They bring those skills back to make your nation, make your people strong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, way use policy. It started way back in 1898 with Way U. You know, when the Westerners came in and defeated China, said, oh, we got to come up with a plan that's actually going to reverse all this. And Mao went back to that in basically in the 70s when he came up with the three. That's why I read Kissinger's book, because Kissinger knows Chinese better than anybody else. That's why Mao came up with the three world policy, and he said that the Chinese were in the third world. In other words, we are developing country because they wanted to lead the third world, or what we call the BRICS, or the global south as we call it now. They knew it was a long-term process. He used policy that was over 100 years old to actually come back and use this. In other words, we're going to do whatever we need to do to bring those knowledge, skills, and abilities into China so that eventually we can do what the white man does. And they did it through basic profession over the last 40 years. And thank goodness, before the time elapsed, we actually got the Chinese to kind of do that in Africa. Because had they not done it, Africa would be looking a lot worse than they are now.
Yeah. So I guess the next question is, in this new era, where do you see commodities going? Are they still going to be suppressed in price? And the reason I'm asking commodities, we're back to Africa again.
It depends. Commodities are going to be very particular. And they're going to be very particular depending on scarcity and need. Because material science, depending on how material science actually develops, it's going to determine what commodity is valuable and what commodity is not. Okay.
Now,
yeah. When you say commodities, we always have a term. It's like stocks and assets and stuff are things of desire. Currencies are things of just mechanisms to use to get what you need to get, and commodities are things you need. You can't do without.
Right.
Commodities are cyclical, no doubt, because it's a supply and demand metric. But let me tell you something. People still eat, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, they still need bridges and tunnels to be done, if I'm not mistaken. People still need lumber for homes, if I'm not mistaken, and something other than sugar or potatoes to put in their car, if I'm not mistaken. Commodities are always a necessity.
I can give you scenarios where commodities, certain commodities, even food, can drop to Not nil, not nothing, but very, very low. It just depends on how scarcely they want to keep commodities. They could easy. You could eat. If you take the same amount of money that was spent on the last 15 years on the Middle East wars, which is about what, say, $4 trillion, give or take, more
Probably
or
around
less.
there, yes.
We're right around there. If you
Yeah.
take that same $4 trillion and put it into the technologies, the off-the-shelf technologies that exist today, you could turn the Sahara into a green belt.
Well,
Yeah,
what
And
happened
and
in
there,
countries?
thus you have
it
commodities.
almost was.
Right, right,
What happened
exactly,
in countries?
exactly. Yeah.
Until Madam Hillary's war there, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Now, to answer your question, this is
Mhm.
when you were saying that this goes around to Africa.
Mhm.
Commodities, irrespective of what they are a thing of need, no matter
Mhm.
what it is, whether it's pigs, oil,
Yeah.
steel, or weed. Commodities are something that is definitely a need that people have to consume. And you have a growing world, a demographic of quote unquote global South that's going to be managed by global North, or at least that's what they're trying. And the thing is when you have that growing demographic worldwide, they're going to need to feed those folks in order to keep them in different labor and other
Yeah.
management classes to
Yeah.
keep
But it,
going.
but it, but
Thing
it's
is, it's just
supply.
common sense.
It's
No, check it
supply
out.
though.
Common
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Here's a just common
Okay.
macroeconomics, supply
Mhm.
and demand.
Yeah.
Irrespective, okay, of supply and demand, those things will always be need to get done because
Yeah.
people still always have to eat one day
Yeah.
or the other. The thing is irrespective of the cyclical nature of whether there's a lack of demand or supply, it may go down, but overall in a macro view, commodities are a necessity that will always be up, okay, or always be going up because of a growth that you have a whole new world that's been growing that needs to eat, that
Not
needs to do
necessarily.
things.
Not
Yeah, I mean,
necessarily.
yeah, it always has to go up for the fact that there's going to
Uh,
always be premium on on premium on
certain
storage,
things. Certain
premium on
things.
insurance, and when yeah, certain things, of course.
Certain
But the
things.
thing is, if you have something you need to survive, you're
Okay.
going to always grow it. Okay, you're going to always use that. You're going, they're not going to stop making concrete because all of a sudden they have wood huts. They're not going to stop making houses because I mean, you
Yeah.
need something in order to make those things happen with your natural resource or commodities.
You
Now, here's the
need
deal.
you need concrete.
Um,
You need concrete until concrete. You find something else to replace concrete.
Right, and then that other thing becomes a commodity that you
And
need to
then
use. It doesn't matter. You're gonna need
and it depends on it depends on who makes it and the cost to
Here,
actually make it.
good case in point.
Yeah.
Water
What the
is
key
one of
thing
the
with
most heavily
commodities?
traded things.
The
Okay,
key
Yeah.
now here's
thing
how it
with
affects
commodities.
Africa.
Let Carl finish. Let Carl finish.
Yeah, now
Oh,
this is
thank you.
how it affects Africa because water is one of our biggest commodities. Even
Mm-hmm.
though it's recycled and we're drinking the water that the dinosaurs drank, it's still you have to pay for it. Okay, and it still needs to be consumed.
Yeah.
The thing is, and how does this affect Africa when you have a new growing world? Okay, China, India, big populations that are growing that's going to need to consume something.
Yeah.
Okay, not just air. The
Yeah.
thing is because of that, Africa being the most unprotected, and as you guys put up very well, the fact that others are going to most likely portion that, i.e., the new scramble for Africa, because they see the fact that not just for their own bellies, but the bellies that they will be managing that are going to be the labor class, the management class, and everyone else, i.e., global South or whatever you want to call it, whether it's Russia, China, and America, or Europeans portioning up Africa, or whatever the case is,
Yeah.
they're going to do it for the fact that they understand, overstand, understand, or whatever, that commodities or the things that people need are going to definitely be a factor.
Well,
Okay, and Africa
okay, but the
is
thing
one of the world's biggest engines. For
okay, but the thing is, okay, it's really complicated, and me and Kwame have talked about this as far as the fourth industrial revolution. The reason that you have a big increase in people and whatnot is because people are, whether we like it or not, are still needed for labor. Whether it's cheap labor, high cost labor, they need it for labor and they need it for markets. They have the same two things. What happens when you automate and you basically reduce the need for human labor to near zero?
Here's what happens. I don't care how many robots you have and how much automation you have in whatever sectors there are. You're going to still need human interactivity to get stuff done.
But how
okay?
many? But how many people do you need?
And Carl, I absolutely agree with you on that one. And that's what I was trying to say with the collaborative robot thing. They're starting to find now there are limits to the robots. And the robots are very inflexible when it comes to, say, product changes. If I wanted to change from, say,
Mm-hmm.
a 80-inch wheelbase vehicle to a 100-inch. I got
Right.
to reprogram the robots and then reset everything, and it makes it more inefficient. So as much as we say that automation is going to continue, I think we're starting to reach the limit with automation in a sense
Case
that
in point.
yeah,
Okay.
Here's
Well,
the,
you
Okay.
ain't gonna use
I
no
program.
automation to put up no 50-story building. I can tell you that now.
exactly.
Okay.
You don't need
Yeah.
automation
I mean,
for that. Number
I
two,
program in oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
two
Okay. Go ahead.
robots.
Yeah, I program in R, Python, neural networks, and AI. Okay,
Mhm.
and I've been doing that quite a bit. Irrespective of what I want to do to try to get my neural networks to happen or what I think I still have to make the rules.
Yep, you have to make.
And you guys was talking about commodities. One thing that Africa has to do, commodities are commodity, but the key thing is where the value is added. Africa countries have to start putting in the infrastructure where the value is added within their country of the commodity that's coming out of the ground. Then that finished resource is sold, exported to the world.
And to me, and I spoke about this before. This is why it's so important in this dead period where you're having this transition of power in the United
Right.
States, the transition of power from Brexit. You're probably going to see Hollande go down in France. You're probably going to see Merkel go down in Germany. During this dead period where the alliances between Western Europe and Asia and the United States are this kind of sphere of influence cooperation comes in. This is the chance for Africa to get rid of its deadwood leadership and
Yep.
put new leadership in there
Yep.
immediately.
Yeah.
Start
Immediately.
bringing in finished goods.
Yep.
Because to me, if there were some magical wand that I had and I could fund it, this is where you need to have internal revolutions in these countries now to get rid of the deadwood.
Yep.
And they need to have something happen in the next year or two, and then have good dynamic leaders installed in the next year
Yeah.
or two. Because
Yeah.
this will be the
And-
last chance for Africa, probably the next 50 years.
Because what they're planning for the world, man, is off the freaking charts. And every time they said there's a barrier to it, and the robots can't get any better, machines can't get any better. All of a sudden, you look up and boom, they're better.
Unless you
Yeah, and
start
the-
making humanoids.
They already have.
Right,
They're already
exactly,
making.
yeah, really.
They get ready to sell sex robots within a year and a half.
Oh, they've had those for a while. Well, to
No.
expand on what Brother Piante was saying.
Yeah, they
I mean,
put 'em on
I was on
market.
tour
No.
with somebody that was like, I mean, one of the artists that I was waiting for that to happen, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Basically, what Brother was saying about what Africa needs is, and I'm gonna expound on that.
Mhm.
They need to have price transparency. Okay, and it could only be done because of those that are in deep infrastructure. I should say those that already see price transparency for their commodities that are there, as well as the way that it's run, i.e., black folks in America, black folks in London, black folks in that are where the infrastructure, where things are traded, where things are more price discovery it is. Then Africans on the entire globe will know, hey, my coal is really, or my copper or my coltan or whatever is really worth this. And
Yeah.
then that goes where Brother Quay was saying as to getting rid of the deadwood. Okay, getting rid of that leadership, because a lot of reason the transparency isn't there is because we've got, Slick Daddy Pentback going in and saying, oh yeah, well, I'll pay you this, even though it's worth, 50 times or 500 times the value.
Right.
While he goes ahead and puts money in Swiss banks.
Yeah.
Pure the price discovery, which a lot of folks are getting into the digital realm. So that way, and that's why I really admire black folks in Africa really starting to get more into digital currencies, because at least they can see they're more informed in terms of exactly what price discovery for their products are, or what it could be. Once they know exactly, okay, this is what oil, this is what gold, and this is what my so-called government is doing, and we're black folk, we're not dumb. Brothers are the smartest folks in the world. We know when 2 and 2 ain't adding up. Okay,
Yeah.
and things start to happen.
Yeah.
When 2 and 2 don't add up, people end up, in very bad situations.
When the Falcon Force first started, me and to have these long conversations, and I said back in 2004, Africa needed back then to come in hard in the paint and start recruiting black talent from America. I mean, hard in the paint. Do you need a city built for you? Do you need a area built for you? What kind of wages do you need? You need to bring in this talent so that you don't have to constantly reinvent the wheel. It's very difficult to train people to do what you do. It's better to recruit those people to come in if they're already black rather than Asian or rather than Lebanese or whatever. You need people to actually come in and compete with those people. And the only people that could actually come in and compete with those people are the people that have been in that system already. And Africans, because they don't want to give up power, refuse to come in and go hard and recruit these people. Because Kwame should have been over in Ghana or East Africa 10 years ago. We will build you. We're going to build you a mansion. We're going to give you this wage. Come in and give up your secrets. We're going to give you citizenship, whatever you need. We'll build a school for your kids, whatever you need.
It should have been that way. But
Yeah.
you know, the unfortunate part in that intervening 12-year period is flipped.
Yeah.
I almost think that there's more skills among the Africans now than blacks over here.
Yeah, but the only thing with them is they hear and don't want to go back.
They don't want to go back.
That's
The
problem.
culture, like you say,
Yeah.
And you know what I would do then? And again, it's probably impossible to enforce, but it should be something where that country can say, okay, fine, you're going to the United States. Here is your bill for all the money we spent in educating you, and you owe us this in so many years, or you have to. If you don't come back, then you owe us this at this interest rate in so many years.
Yeah.
And we're gonna tack a rider onto whatever debt you have in your country,
Yeah.
and that's gonna be us, right? So
that should be a global policy for all black folk.
Yes, it should be. If there was some way that some of these countries can set up a bank, so to speak, and say, hey, this is going to go on your credit report if you don't come back.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if I was president, I'll
Can't
start
make
training Americans and start getting rid of visas.
What's it, Baba?
If I was president, I'd start training Americans and get rid of these H2, H1, EB5 visa holders.
Immediately.
That's coming very soon.
Well, there's an untold secret to all of this stuff that I learned way back in the '90s. And the guy I learned how to do commodities from, he was a trader way back in the '90s. He was telling me this, and he's telling me this was coming. This is what they were planning before China flipped the game on them. Actually, they were draining the United States of talent, resources, and technology, shipping it over to China because they were basically going to the elite were going to transform the United States into basically a second or third world country, and boost China as the leader of the pack. But China flipped the game. They don't want to be under white people because of their ego, because of their worldview. Chinese are superior. And there's
that's what Middle Kingdom means.
Yeah.
You're the center of the world.
The center of the world.
Yeah.
Which is something they got from, which is straight out of Egypt.
Yep.
And they should have that.
Because the pyramids, the Great Pyramid was built in the center of the world.
Yeah.
Right. They should have that, as we should.
And
we should be the same way.
And the dragon throne is based on Memphite theology. The dragon. If you look at the dragon throne and you know what Memphite theology is and the way it's set up, the dragon throne, which is the center of China, is basically built on the Egyptian wisdom.
Well, you all know this. Who created the Shangdang dynasty?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just simple. King of the Mountain is not a multicultural sport, and to everybody, like the Chinese and India and everyone else, multiculturalism is Hunger Games. The black folk, it's kumbaya. To them, multiculturalism, i.e., no matter what dynasty you're in, from A to B, no matter where they get the theology or whatever, to them is Hunger Games, and they want to be the center of the world, just like the Anglos do, just like now the Hispanics do, or anyone else, which is smart. I mean, it's common sense. The thing is do black folk, and that's where that policy of censoring those who don't have even the smell, a scent of that ideology. That not only should they be economically censored, but they need to be censored, like you were talking about the black folks that leave and need to be, here's what you owe us. They need to be dealt with in that kind of mechanism overall.
Black folks do not have a culture. They do not have a culture. They have a broken. What passes for culture is a broken Western culture. They do not have one. They've never had one, and that's
I think the Africans have one.
Yeah, the Africans have one,
but they don't. The Africans have one that they don't respect, and therefore that's why they don't go back.
That's why they fall into their Christianity so damn much.
Exactly.
There's no infrastructure. Yeah, of course. Well, they have the Indians are the same way. The
Indians are kind of funny, because the Indian culture, yes, you could, if as Chris said, and as I've heard from other people who've been to India, they say it's probably one of the worst places they've seen on earth in terms of man's inhumanity to man, right?
Mm.
But when they come over here, somehow it seems like the various castes will coalesce and work together for something to build back the culture up there. What hasn't happened yet in India is that when the money's going back, who is getting most of the spoils, and are they going to start having an argument saying, well, how comes the the Brahmins are getting most of the spoils, then the Dravidians aren't, so to speak, or the Tamils?
You know what? You know what changed? You know, if you read the world is flat. What changed? What changed India? What changed Indian culture as far as that is concerned, and them actually going back is Y2K.
Really, why is that?
Well, because Y2K, because under Y2K the banks and the big iron didn't have enough programmers that still knew that particular I forget what language it was. Uh,
Yes.
they didn't know that
Look,
language because it was a dead language. Okay, and they had trained all the programmers here that knew the language were very very old because they had gone to
That's right.
much better, much more efficient languages, right? So nobody
That's right.
knew the old language. So what they said is cheaper to train Indians in the old language because they're not influenced by the newer languages to actually come in and train them under the old language and come in and hire them as cheaply as possible to come in and fix the problem, which they did. But they unleashed something. They unleashed technology. He said, "Okay, now that we're here, we got trained programmers. What are we going to do? Let's change. Let's set up programming cells. Let's set up off-site. What is it? Call centers and whatnot. The
Hmm.
internet and programming, Y2K and the internet changed India completely. So in other words, where you couldn't do things in India and you had to come here and live a certain lifestyle, they said, "Hey, wait a minute. We can replicate what we learned here because we came on the Y2K. Guess what? We can come back and set up a service center for less than that in India, and with the internet, we can do the exact same thing." So that started that ball rolling.
And I have a few more minutes, fellas. So probably
Okay.
yeah,
about
me too.
five more
All right.
minutes.
But I'm just gonna say this, and I'm gonna get ready to go. When we talking
Okay.
about Africa, major things in Africa needed is agriculture production, and it has to be done with conservation of water. You just can't come up with these big spraying gas moves and spray water all over the place.
Yeah.
It's got to use that drip technology where you conserve water, and you got to be able to feed your people. You got to be able to export to countries adjacent to you, then start exporting any place else you want to.
It's not a matter of money. It's a matter. It's not a
But
matter
guess
of
what?
money or technology. It's a matter of will.
Matter
Yeah,
of will, you
Matter of
absolutely right.
will.
and Africa has that technology already because in the Sahel there's these ula part. I think they're
Mm.
pronounced ula. These
Yeah.
clay pots
Yeah.
that you could where it rains very, very little. The water is filled in these pots and they stick it into the ground and then it slowly the evaporation slowly feeds the roots of the plants and it's very successful. So African technology and ingenuity is already there to do this because I think a lot of people confuse technology with mechanism and computers and all
Right.
that sort of stuff,
No.
and that doesn't necessarily have to be the case.
I mean, yeah,
Right, technology
with a
it
trillion,
means technique.
with a trillion dollars, you could be with $1 trillion in competitive technology. You can actually transfer Africa if that's what you really wanted to do. If you really wanted to do
And that's why it's so important that these Africans in the diaspora take that technology back there rather
Yeah.
than trying to buy it.
yeah.
That's right.
To expound on what is needed
Hmm.
is a brain drain away from these European and these other diasporas
Yeah.
of Africans to go back to Africa like they're swimming from the Titanic to the Carpathians.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it's
Yeah.
these other countries need to have not only a physical because they don't have to necessarily leave per se. Yet it would be advisable
Yeah.
for Black folk to return, but also the information that we have,
Yeah.
the monies we have,
Yeah.
the ideas and the secrets that we have that
Yeah.
these other nations have given us because we've built other nations, no doubt
Yeah.
about
Yes.
it. Just you can point, throw a dart at the globe, and you can tell what we built. The thing is that drain of ideas and everything else back to the continent, and then it's not just ending there, as you were saying earlier, of kicking out the dead weight. Because if you have some, Sheriff David Clark's over there, we're in trouble. Because everything we go is
Yeah.
to be getting right back, but also protectionists. highly isolationist and protectionist, but a unified protectionism. So that way they can't create another South and North Sudan like they're trying to do with Nigeria, like they're trying to do with Niger, Chad, what they've done, so that way when we're protectionists, and that's one of the reasons I got into what I'm doing, because I kept telling folks, watch Man Friday. That tells you how China did what it did. It tells you how India did what it did. The whole thing was scripted in that movie back then when Mao and everybody else were, they were freaking about then. Man Friday was the blueprint. You get the guy's resource. You get his money. You go in and you bow your head. Dr. John Henry Clark said it too many times, and he basically put the blueprint of what Man Friday was. He said, look, the Japanese did it. They went in, they bowed their head. Oh, I'm so sorry, so sorry. They came in. The Koreans did it. Everybody else, they gathered the resource and the assets. Then what happened is when they brought it back home, they all of a sudden had the gun like Richard Roundtree in the end. Then when crackheads came over and says, well, I need you to go ahead and do what I have to say, he says, I've got all the money. Yeah. And then when he tried to join the tribe at the very end, back to join Richard Roundtree's tribe, and they said, we can't let him in because we know what these Peckerwoods are doing. Yeah. What did they do? The dude shot himself in the head. Well, if you look at what happens with Man Friday and look at the current case of geopolitical and economic, you're going to find that all these other nations, India, everybody else, that's why they created the BRICS and their own alternative and credit systems. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, America's out in the South China Sea trying to start stuff, and they're saying you can't get in. The TPP deal's dead. You can't get in. They're even strangling on TTIP. You can't get in. Right. What are they doing? They elected a suicidal situation, i.e. Donald Trump. They're shooting themselves in the head. Man Friday is something I've been telling everybody to watch. We're seeing it live. Yeah.
But and also the reason why they put Trump in, and I read this one of Pepe Escobar's articles, they know that now that TPP is dead and Japan has created their own free trade area, the fear among the folks that back Trump is that those rare earths and those computer parts that run through the South China Sea will get blockaded out from going to the United States if he pisses the Chinese off. So that's why they have no choice militarily than to repatriate the
Yeah. And China's got its own now. Its own that everybody's going to, their own TP, the FANG, I think it's called. And there was something, or the FA something, that's China's version of TTIP or TTP. Yeah. And now, because remember, they didn't want to include the Chinese, and then the Chinese said, "Hey, I'm gonna go in."
That's why I said when Edward Snowden came in with his Easter basket of goodies to China and Russia, I told you the game was up. It's over.
Yeah, you're very right about that one. Yeah, they got every. In fact, I think Edward Snowden gave Russia a lot of that. Radio blocking technology that they use against the U.S. in the Black Sea. Yep. A lot of the hacking technology the Russians used to hack Victoria Nuland's phone. Yep. During the whole Ukraine protests, and because Russia leapfrogged the United States overnight. Yeah. When Snowden got there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I told you as soon as that happened, I said game's up, because now he has the key to every back door in the world.
Yep.
They had, and he gave it up, and that's how come they wanted to get him.
Yeah, and even the guys who are quote unquote pro-liberty guys, they support Assange, but to a man, all these CIA guys don't support Snowden.
No.
And then it's for that reason. But I guess if they give Snowden a nice Black Sea resort with a couple Russian honeys, he'll be okay, basically.
Well, the thing is, I remember I was watching this movie. I think it was called Thief or Burglar, and it was a black gangster that had killed this. Had tried to kill this thief that came in from out of town. In fact, he came to Detroit to rob a bank or something like that, and then got busted. But at the very end, there was a guy that was after the old gangster, and he had gotten captured. They put him in a closet. Right? They were going to kill him, but see, the old gangster died, and then the new guy took over. And then he let him out of the closet. He untied him. They said, you still got a beef? He said, well, the old dude is dead. I'm beefless. And he said, well, come work for me. And he said, okay, what kind of benefits do you have? And he said, nigga, I'm going to let you live.
On that note, guys.
I'll see you guys later on, man.
All right.
Live, so I'm going to bed.
All right, good talking to you guys. I'm gonna see how this actually worked out. I'm gonna try to edit this and send you guys a copy.
All right, appreciate it.
Wonderful.